President Ettinger, we're ready whenever you are.
Thanks so much, Amber. Good afternoon, everyone. I now call the University Senate to order. Before we begin, please note that in order to facilitate a free and open discussion, we're going to allow senators to unmute themselves when they are called on or to raise a point of order. Please make sure that your microphone is muted and your video is off at all other times. Senate office staff will mute people who unmute themselves out of turn. In addition, please remember to identify yourself and which unit you represent when you are called on. Thank you in advance for observing these protocols. Item number 2 concerns administrative responses to University Senate action and is presented for information. Item number 3 is a list of recent faculty, staff, and student deaths that have been sent for announcement to the Senate. I invite you to observe a moment of silence while I read the names. In terms of faculty and staff, Bernard Bachrock, Jennifer Barnes, Linda Crawford, Robert Fredrickson, Dustin Savage Rothmeyer, Nicholas Tanner, and Pamela Wilson. And in terms of students, Anthony Amini and Reed Ryan. The next order of business would be the approval of the minutes of the University Senate meeting on November 2nd, 2023. I ask Amber to please initiate the poll.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. There being 120 ayes and 1 nay, that motion carries.
Thank you very much. The next item of business is my report. Thank you for the opportunity to give this. It's my pleasure to be with you here today. I'd like to start by congratulating everyone for their involvement in our shared governance model this semester. I'm personally very appreciative of these formal opportunities for consultation and also for the many independent conversations I've enjoyed with our faculty, students, and staff. We continue to hear affirmations of success and progress on our campuses, and I'd like to point out a few measures that stand out. This fall, 7 out of 10 students system-wide are from Minnesota, so we're doing well with attracting Minnesota's young minds. Also system-wide, this fall's class has the highest percentage of BIPOC students in our recorded history, nearly 1/3 of all first-year students. That diversity mirrors trends in our state and nation, and it continues to be an essential part of our mission for all of our students to feel a sense of belonging here at the university. The Duluth and Rochester campuses had their highest 4-year graduation rates ever recorded, and the Twin Cities campus has recorded the second highest 4-year rate and the highest 6-year graduate rates of all time. That 4-year rate has more than doubled in the last 20 years. The university's position as one of the world's outstanding institutions was reaffirmed recently with the publication of the Shanghai Rankings 2023 Global Ranking of Academic Subjects. In 8 subjects, the U of M ranked in the top 25 globally, including ecology, ranked number 3, library and information sciences, number 4, management, ranked 13, communication, number 17, economics, ranked 20, psychology, ranked 23, medical technology, 24, and statistics, 24. In total, 34 out of the 47 subjects in which the U of M was evaluated were ranked among the top 100 in the world. Now that I've been in this role of interim president for almost 6 months, I find I'm continually impressed by the strength of this university, the expertise and resolve of our faculty and staff, and the resilience of our students. And I'm equally proud for what the University of Minnesota does for Minnesota and for the world. There are the research discoveries that make it into the news practically every day, some of which are featured in our new media campaign entitled Dear Minnesota. Our external research funding has increased 30% over the past 5 years. And there are the countless ways we work with Minnesotans in meaningful community-driven engagement. There are more than 1,700 individual partnerships with our extension group alone. Sharing these stories around our campuses, with our government leaders, and with the public is very important. I'd like to briefly address a topic that's on the minds of many: the conflict in the Middle East. Seeing the images of human suffering is deeply saddening, and we're acutely aware of its effect on members of our U of M campus communities. I've held several listening sessions with students, faculty, and alumni, and I've taken the opportunity to reiterate that the university needs to remain a place where people can express their opinions. And at the same time, we are focused on providing a safe and supportive campus environment for everyone, and continue to encourage any member of our community to seek out assistance they need during this time. Student mental health services remain available for individuals in need of trauma-informed care, and we remain committed to upholding the principles of support and empathy as we navigate through challenging times. Faculty and staff have resources available through the Employee Assistance Program. All members of our community, if they encounter any instances of bias or discrimination, should bring them to our attention through the Bias Response and Referral Network. And if necessary, contact law enforcement. I'll now move on to some other updates. The Board of Regents meets next week for the last time this fall. Items on the agenda include an annual report on the status of university research and commercialization of technology, a look at the 2023 University Performance and Accountability Report, and an update of the Impact 2025 System-Wide Strategic Plan, and a fall semester public safety update. As you've likely heard, we were notified early last week that Fairview was electing not to renew our current agreement, which runs through the end of 2026. We have previously said, as has Fairview, that our current agreement would need to change for the future, so that announcement merely affirms those intentions. We remain in conversations with Fairview about the possibility of entering into a modified agreement or extension. Indeed, we just met with them again today. The notice does not affect the clinical partnership we share with Fairview today, and the world-class care patients receive in mHealth Fairview hospitals and clinics will continue. The university also continues to participate in critical discussions and planning with state leaders that will shape the future of Minnesota's healthcare, including our ongoing work with the Governor's Task Force on Academic Health. Our government relations work has already ramped up, even 2 months prior to the start of the Minnesota legislative session. This year, our state capital request is focused exclusively on funding for higher education asset preservation and replacement, or HEAPR funding. The requested funding of $500 million would allow the renewal of more than 150 buildings to support education, research, and outreach across the state of Minnesota. It will also go toward addressing a large and growing backlog of facility needs on all of our campuses. It really makes the best financial sense for the university, with the state's help, to address these issues now and to start to diminish this great backlog. Funding through HEAPR can address building accessibility needs, fire protection systems, leaky roofs and windows, asbestos abatement, and other core maintenance issues that need to be corrected to provide safe and fully usable spaces. While HEAPR investments may not be as glamorous as new buildings, they are essential to keeping the U of M safe and functional. Earlier this month, I had the opportunity to visit the Duluth campus and participate in community listening sessions regarding the search for their next chancellor. Over the course of the day, search committee co-chairs Lori Carroll, who's the chancellor of the Rochester campus, and Lisa Irwin, UMD's vice chancellor for student life, led an exceptional series of conversations with students, faculty, staff, and community members about the desired attributes for their next leader. The feedback we received is informing the position profile and our advertising the position that will begin early next month. We are still on track to hold finalist interviews on campus in the spring 2024 semester. My thanks again to Lori and Lisa for their leadership on this important search. Earlier this month, I spoke at the University of Minnesota Foundation Board of Trustees annual meeting and dinner. I provided an overview of the activities and initiatives this fall, as well as a snapshot of the Dear Minnesota campaign. And finally, in the category of really something quite fun, the weekend before Thanksgiving, I was in Washington, D.C. with Dean Brian Burr of our College of Food, Agriculture, and Natural Resource Sciences for events related to the National Thanksgiving Turkey Ceremony. This year's National Thanksgiving Turkey, Liberty, and its alternate Bell are from Minnesota, which leads the nation in turkey production. For the first time ever, the pardoned turkeys will live out the rest of their lives at the University of Minnesota. It's fitting that these turkeys are coming to the U of M, a land-grant university dedicated to helping food producers. They're headed to a quiet and comfortable roost at CFANS, where they'll serve as educational ambassadors. They'll be cared for by some of the world's top poultry science experts, faculty, and students in the Department of Animal Science. And they'll help instruct the next generation of agricultural students. Liberty and Bell are not finished yet with their 15 minutes of fame. Next week, there will be an official ceremony welcoming them to their new home on the St. Paul campus. This concludes my report. I'd like to wish everyone some rest and relaxation after the semester concludes, and I hope you have a great and safe holiday season. We can turn to questions to the president. There were no questions submitted in advance, but since we have time, I'd be happy to take any questions from senators at this time. Seeing a question from Jerry and then Scott and then Kathleen. So go ahead, Jerry.
Oh, thank you for your start to that with the rankings of the schools. So within the last few days, the Princeton Review issued their top 50 green colleges. A green college being defined as superb sustainable practices, a strong foundation of sustainability education, and a healthy quality of life for students on campus. And disturbingly, the University of Minnesota, none of our campuses are on that list of the top 50. So my question is, how are we going to get up there? What's our policy to green up the campus? I'll put a link in the chat too, if they'll let me, to that ranking so you can see it. I like technology, so okay. So anyway, I just thought I saw that and I was thinking, you know, we have Forever Green and we have a lot of things going on the campus that's important. And it's important to think about how we're going to get rid of asbestos in our buildings and do other things that make us green. And so that's my question. I sent this to Amber yesterday and she said I better do it verbally because there wasn't enough time. So.
Well, thank you very much for the question. System-wide, we are committed to sustainability, and we do participate in other sustainability rankings and ratings. We ranked 8th in the United States on the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings, which measures institutional impact toward the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. The Duluth, Morris, and Twin Cities campuses have all received gold ratings from the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. In Impact 2025, we redoubled our efforts, making the commitment to build a fully sustainable future. And some of the examples that we've done to advance this work, including hiring the university's first system-wide chief sustainability officer in 2022. Each campus is developing and implementing plans to address climate change, and each campus is undertaking comprehensive sustainability assessments and developing new initiatives from those reviews. You know, in terms of this particular ranking, I will ask our team to kind of take a look at whether we just don't provide the information or whether there was some aspect of how they ranked it that was less favorable for the university, and also to see if there's anything we can learn from the rankings where we could improve. Thank you. Scott?
Interim President Ettinger, thank you very much for taking my question. Later in this agenda, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Regents Scholarship Program, which is our version of kind of a free tuition program for employees. I think you are uniquely qualified as former CEO of Hormel to kind of talk to us about the importance of such free tuition programs, access to those programs, and how those programs significantly improve employee experiences, particularly in the entry-level positions and those in operational positions.
Thank you, Scott, for the comments. Yeah, I look forward to hearing the details of it, and if there's something afterwards that I could follow up with you on after we've heard that, I would be happy to do that. Kathleen.
All right. Hello, colleagues and President Ettinger. I'm really pleased to have a second to ask you a question and really make a comment. First, can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm really excited about the HEAPR request and this idea that we're putting all of our eggs into one very rustic basket, and the need is profound. And I imagine that 500 million is a state or systems wide request. And so I'm thinking about immediately, oh, what kind of leverage can we, use for our legislatures to have great incentive? And the first thing that comes to mind is the amount of money that would pump into the local economy in terms of all of the construction people and all the workers that contribute to at every single level down to the custodial staff. And so I'm wondering if the university could think about, or maybe already has, how much money that would pump in. And is that like a twofold difference? 500 million go in and 1 million or 100. Well, actually it would be 1,000 million. Is that a billion? No.
Yeah, billion.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money, and that could be some serious leverage. And the second point, so I'm wondering what the number might be, if we know yet. And that then Jerry's question was about the Green Initiative and sustainability. And so that immediately leverages again into this whole idea of the HEAPR money. And, the university, maybe that could be another talking point that you've considered, which is that we need to do this because we're wasting money on all of these leaky buildings, and that we need to get on to the future with the Green Initiative. And my last point is really about, well, full disclosure, I'm on the St. Paul campus, and I was a department chair in a department
30
that—
seconds remaining for questions. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ned. That was a condemned building, and now it's off the condemned list. But and now I'm in a different building that's pretty decent. But we as other campuses have some real needs, and I want to make the suggestion that we say to the legislatures, we're going to look at this list of our priorities and the amount of money you give to us. We're going to do this, and we're going to take a new approach with all those old and moldy buildings. And I would like to suggest that we take them off our list and move forward. So those are my 3 points. Thank you.
Thank you for all of those. Yeah, I mean, I do believe we are emphasizing the sustainability advantages, and we'll try to make those arguments as we head in. Definitely understand, in terms of the advantages to the local economy, and we'll be much more specific. We did provide a very detailed list already to the legislature in terms of what goes behind that request. But as we get into session and get closer with it under the leadership of our new executive director, Melissa Lopez-Franzen, we will be much more specific about drilling down to a given area. And we'll be asking for support from faculty and students to help us advocate for these important funds.
I'd be happy to help, or help you find people to help.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I really hope we can make a big dent in our list and then just change the story after that instead of reliving that list forever. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. I'm not sure, Amber, how we're doing for time, but maybe we'll proceed then. The next item of business is the provost report. So Provost Croson, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see you all. I have 4, maybe 5 updates. And again, there were no questions submitted in advance, but I'm happy to take questions from the floor. So on the Twin Cities campus, we have launched or will shortly launch searches for the new College of Liberal Arts Dean, the new Law School Dean, and the new Vice Provost and Dean of Undergraduate Education positions. So those will all be very important searches for our university, for those particular colleges, and especially that last position for our undergraduate recruitment, enrollment, and all of those, and curriculum, and all of those items. So if you know of individuals who would be appropriate for those positions, please encourage them to apply. You can nominate them through the search consultants, or you can just send an email to me or to provost@umn.edu, and we are happy to pass your nominations along. We also continue to make progress on our examination of our core curriculum, which we're calling Core 2025. Those consultations continue. Our hope is to have something that we would vote on this spring. I will say we especially value the participation and of our current students who serve on that committee. I was just at a committee meeting earlier today, and their insights were extremely helpful and very well received and integrated into the planning. On the same theme of students, our negotiations continue with our new graduate assistant union, which is called GLUE. Today and tomorrow is the 4th bargaining session with that unit. I understand they have a rally planned for tomorrow as well. So if some of you see them out and about, that will be a useful thing to take a look at. And then finally, we are beginning the process of our reaccreditation through the Higher Learning Commission, HLC. So for those of you who have been around a while, you remember that reaccreditations happen once every 10 years. Our last reaccreditation was in 2015. So we are up for reaccreditation in 2025. The reaccreditation team will have their site visit at the end of September. I think it's scheduled to start September 30th, 2025. And so we are starting to put in place the various committees, the various information gathering, all those kind of things this spring semester, so that we can prepare the final accreditation report over next fall and next spring to be delivered for the fall after that. So you have to start these things well in advance, and I just want to let you know we were starting them. There is an important role for university governance to play in that reaccreditation process, and Mark B is on our executive steering committee, so he gets to chime in on many of those things. But again, if any of you are interested in participating in maybe more deeply in the accreditation process, I want to urge you to reach out again to my office at provost@umn.edu, and of course to nominate people who you think could be helpful as we proceed down that path. Finally, I'll just mention that my understanding is that the presidential search is currently in the quiet phase. So the position description is out on the street. The search consultants are reaching out to their networks, are accepting nominations, are looking for candidates. And so if you know of anyone who would be an excellent candidate, I want to encourage you to submit their name again to the search consultants, or to reach out to the Board of Regents or Mary Davenport, who's co-chairing that committee, or any of your other colleagues. And we hope we're going to have a really great pool. So with that, I'll stop, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Provost Croson. Any questions for the provost? I'm not seeing any, but I have the full screen access. Going once, going twice. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Rachel. Item number 9 is the SCC report. Professor B, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Ettinger. Hello, everyone. Today's report's fairly short, since it's only been a short few weeks since we last convened on November 2nd. Now, as you will We'll recall from that meeting on November 2nd, a resolution related to current events in the Middle East was introduced as new business. That resolution was discussed, but ultimately was not approved by the body. Following that Senate meeting and acting in my role as SCC chair, I reached out to the two presenters of the resolution to provide some information outlining sort of procedures and possibilities for next steps that they could consider. And those possible next steps included either calling for a special meeting of the University Senate to discuss and vote on a revised resolution. That's something that the Constitution provides a mechanism for, or sort of working with the Senate office and perhaps the Senate committee to shepherd a resolution through the regular consultative procedures for bringing resolutions to the University Senate. And for now, that's all I have for you by way of an update on that topic at this time. The SCC itself meets once a month, and most recently met on November 20th. And until shortly before that meeting, the main item on the agenda had been a discussion of a resolution coming from the Disabilities Issues Committee on supporting a substance, excuse me, I'm gonna get the title right, supporting a substance misuse recovery community on campus. But at the request of the committee, that discussion was postponed until February. We look forward to having it then, and I think you'll be hearing more about this resolution in the spring semester. Having had a more open agenda for our last meeting, the SCC took up a discussion of a topic that the leadership of all four of the consultative committees of each constituent Senate, group we call the CCL, had previously discussed amongst ourselves. And that discussion was about the recent data breach and more generally about policies and practices regarding data retention at the university. We also talked about the offer of 12 months of identity protection, which I think some believe should have been longer. We talked about the demise of reports, about changes related to Email for Life, and about changes to storage limits on Google Drive and access to new Google Share drives. It's quite a wide-ranging IT-related discussion. I'll be meeting soon with the chair of the Senate Committee on Information Technologies, Michelle Dreesen, to discuss these issues. And I'm also currently working with the Senate office staff to identify and invite sort of the relevant policy owners from the administration to attend a future SCC meeting for further discussion. If any of you have thoughts or concerns related to any of these particular IT-related items, I would encourage you to reach out to the leaders of your consultative committee to discuss those, or contact me directly to do so. Lastly, I've been asked to make a quick announcement. The Classroom Advisory Subcommittee's Classroom Needs Survey, which we heard about last time, will be going out in early December to faculty and student senators. You will be asked to send it on to your constituents. So please be on the lookout for this email from the Senate office, and please send it on to your constituents when you receive it. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 10 is a discussion about the proposed changes to the Twin Cities undergraduate general education requirements. Professor Durfee, please go ahead with this.
Yeah, thank you, Interim President Ettinger, and thank you, Senators. My name is Will Durfee. I'm a professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, and it's been my privilege and honor to be the chair of the Core Curriculum 2025 committee. This is a committee that was put in place almost 2 years ago now by the Senate Committee on Educational Policy and the Provost. And our charge was to examine and make recommendations of changes to the liberal education requirements that would apply to all undergraduates on the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus. We last spoke to you on this body on April 2022, which seems like forever ago. And we're not quite there yet, but I did want to update you on where we are and to get your opinions on the direction that we're going. So I'm going to go through just a few slides. I believe that you received from Amber yesterday or the day before a longer slide deck that has a little bit more detail on it, but I'm just going to hit some of the highlights now to open up to the discussion, which is really the most important part because we only have about 25 minutes for this item. So maybe one of the most important things is why do we need a change? What's going on where we need a change? And this is really those of you that have read the Boyer 2030 report that really is a call to action on undergraduate education at large research universities. and asking ourselves if we really are providing our students with a transformative education that will apply what they're doing later in life and work and citizenship. So this need to really connect a general education program to the post-graduation world. Our current liberal education requirements are really good. There's nothing really wrong with them. We are at a point, however, where many students do view it as a checklist to get through, rather than being a valuable part of their university education that they're going to call upon after they graduate. And then part of that is empowering the student to have a bit more control and enable them to connect part of their general education to an area of interest that is meaningful to society and meaningful to the student. So kind of that's sort of the driver for the reason for change. And again, in the longer slide deck, you can look at some more things in the charge we got from the Provost and the Senate Committee on Educational Policy and some of the guidelines that we were using. And what I want to present to you is a framework, and I don't recall whether we had this in April 2022 when we spoke with you, but it's a framework that we settled on a while ago, and now are working through a lot of the details. But basically, this idea of in the general education part of the university education, that you have the university curriculum that's grounded in the breadth that really defines what liberal education means in the true definition of liberal education, while at the same time empowering the student to organize part of it around a specific area of interest. And so this diagram that many of you have seen, which has undergone a little bit of evolution, over the past maybe 6 months, but still defines the essence of what we're calling the framework. Which is that you've got a core, or which is embodied in 6 foundational areas, and students would need to take all 6 of those. Part of that core is a course in race, power, and justice in the United States. That would be the only one of the core that could double count against one of the other foundations. So that, that core really is the breadth of liberal education. Then there are focus areas that are broadly clustered into possibly 3 or 4, maybe 5 groups. And the student chooses one that's of interest to them. And they could be current societal problem related to environment or clean water or justice, or possibly it could be an area of some philosophical question that has plagued humankind over the millennia. Exactly what those focus areas might be in the broad categories, that's where we need, all of your help. But the idea is the student can pick one and dive into it in some depth to the point where 2 or 3 of the foundation courses would need to connect to that focus area. And then possibly one additional course, again, the details are being determined, but it allows the students really to, take a dive down in. And then the last part of this framework is something at the beginning and something at the end, where the one at the beginning, which is academically oriented, really serves to expose the student to the idea of a liberal education, which is being able to look at something from multiple different lenses, and potentially also help the students sort of think about, okay, what aspect do I want to focus on? And then something towards the end, and by beginning and the end, I don't mean first year and fourth year, but somewhere, in the beginning and somewhere towards the end. But at the end, there's some kind of a synthesis course or activity where the students can, it's a show what you know. So it enables them to synthesize what they've learned in their focus area and be able to present it in a way, either individually or maybe part as a group. Again, those details still need to be worked out to demonstrate that they were able to assimilate and understand that focus area and to present what they've learned about it in any one, possibly multiple different kinds of media. So again, it doubles down on the meaning of liberal education, empowers students to mold part of it around a societal question. I'm not going to go through this whole list. You know, one of the real principles that we hold true to, which exists in our current liberal education program, is common for all students at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus. So that is, there's no exception for some of the high credit majors like dental hygiene or my own major in mechanical engineering. What those foundations would be, that's something that you know, within the committee we've been wrestling with for quite some time, and have been getting lots of input from outside. You know, the list you see here is one possibility, you know, for the 6. And what you don't have in the slide deck is the backup detail on exactly how these are all defined, that we hope to be having that for you to look at shortly. And then the other part of the draft form is what the focus areas might be. And so they potentially could have names that might sound similar to our current themes, or they could have buckets that while our current themes, you know, would be part of it, you know, would be different names. So how many different buckets and how broad or narrow they are, again, in what those buckets are, again, are something that we need the community's help on. And then this is my last slide. So you know, this is a big change, and I think the feeling is that a big change is needed if we really want to turn the dial and have a general education program that really can challenge the students and help the students in what they're going to be doing post-graduation. I think the feeling is that tweaks to our current system. I mean, certainly we could choose to do that as a university, but that's not really going to move the dial to where the world is in 2023, or I guess 25 or 26, or whenever this thing should the university decide to put it in place, actually is in place. But you know, along the way, there's lots of challenges, and believe me, we on the committee are aware of it. Within the committee, have been hearing of it. You know, and one of the real struggles is this compromise between being able to dive deep down in one thing compared to breadth. And does this new framework lose that breadth? And what the compromise or trade-off should be between amount of student choice and amount that we as a university should tell the students is good for them to take. Then there's, you know, fiscal issues, why we're not being directed by the university budget model. Nevertheless, you know, any kind of change like this is going to potentially have impacts, either plus or minus, in particular departments or colleges. So certainly we're aware of that. You know, these things at the beginning and the end, there's a lot of stuff associated with that. Who teaches it, how many credits, and so on. And so on. I won't go through this whole list. So with that, I will stop, and would love to hear your thoughts, comments, directions, recognizing that our time is short, and this is certainly not the only opportunity that people have to weigh in. So, Interim President, I'll turn it back to you to moderate the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Professor Durfee. So if you have a comment, please both raise your hand and send a Zoom chat to Aaron Heath, stating whether your comment is either in favor of the proposal, a pro, against the proposal, con, or other, just a neutral comment or a question. I'm going to defer during this section now to Aaron to call on people in the appropriate order. I also ask that others refrain from chatting Aaron at this time so she can monitor the order. In addition, Amber is putting a link to these debate protocols in the chat so that senators can refer to those as well throughout the meeting. So, Aaron, you please go ahead.
Okay, first we have Ellen Messer-Davidow, who has an other point.
Thank you. I'm Ellen Messer-Davidow, Department of English. Will, thank you very much for going over that. If I'm asked to kind of evaluate and vote on this plan, I have at least 4 questions that I would want answered, and you may not be able to answer them today. There may be more detail forthcoming. First, what courses fit into the little black boxes for foundations and focuses? And I don't, from the existing curriculum, I don't need an exhaustive list, but I need an exemplary list. 2, what does this plan mean for departmental requirements for major and minor? And let us remember that some students have double majors or a major and minor, so they're already taking a lot of courses. I'd hate to see this core edge out or reduce the major and minor requirements. 3, how much curricular revamping would departments and individual faculty have to do? Because we already have work overload, and we feel that the university is getting some free labor over the summer. 4, would this plan disrupt and or support departments, plural, plans for future faculty hires in particular specialisms?
Yeah, great. So thank you, Ellen. So I'm not going to answer each one in terms of thank you for saying that these are questions that are important and need to be answered before it gets to the point of something specific enough to vote on. And absolutely the intent, I mean, the reason why there currently isn't more detail on the focus areas and the foundation is that within the committee we're even struggling with that, and we're starting to get some definition. I will say that the sense is to have things be a little bit broader than, for example, our current disciplinary cores, to enable maybe a broader spectrum of courses that can fit in. So if I were to guess, I mean, every existing course that is certified for a core theme could fit in somewhere. There might have to be a little bit of tweaks, but thank you for that. And then I'll just the second one that you said about the major and minor. So there are constraints. I mean, we would love to have all kinds of possibilities in general education. When it comes to things like high within credit majors, and as you say, majors and minors, and if we want to have this be common for everyone without exceptions, which by the way is not the case at other universities, it means you don't have, you can't have it be bigger, you can't have it delay time to graduation, you can't have it be more credit for students, more tuition dollars for students. So that's a very real constraint on how you get it all in. But thanks so much for those questions. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Michael.
Hi, thanks so much. I'm in CLA, and I have been in touch with Will for a number of months now and had some meetings within CLA. So I just wanted to bring the Senate up to speed about some of the concerns that have circulated among chairs and among, I would say, about a dozen departments that I've spoken with. One is the overall loss of educational quality, I think, with this proposal focused on the credit count. If this is only 25 credits, this gives us the smallest gen ed of any of the Big Ten. Most gen eds in the Big Ten hover around 30 to 35 in the mid 30s. Illinois is up at 40. I think Wisconsin's around 29. I think, there are some real gaps in this curriculum. I'm thinking about global perspectives, which we currently have, which doesn't have any explicit place. But in the world we live in today, 2023, to me, it's just unthinkable to not have global perspectives, even as a requirement alongside race, power, and justice, in order to survive as a human society. So those are things that I think we can afford in terms of credit count to add to the curriculum. I think the bookend seminars and the focus areas have some real problems as well. I think that having the students choose is a difficult thing to do at age 18. When students have 1,200 LE courses to choose from, I don't think they need more choice. I think they've got a lot of options. And I think that I'm in the camp of saying that the LE curriculum should be about breadth, that it should be about allowing students to be exposed to things that they're not anticipating. And I think the current curriculum, I think we can tweak it. I think we can improve it. I think we can make it more current. But I think the current framework we have does a lot to ensure that kind of breadth so students can encounter the unexpected.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for those comments. As I say, you and I and others have been talking a lot, and we'll continue to. And thanks on the first point about other universities. We're diving in, doing a more close benchmarking, having some of our advisors do that, so we really, because it is important, as you say, to see where we are, particularly with respect to other peer universities. So thanks for bringing that to our attention. Really appreciate it.
Okay, next we have Peter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Makovicki. I am at the Department of Earth Sciences. My question was a little bit different, and it relates to the fact that we have, I think most of us as instructors, seen our students' habits, learning habits really change post-pandemic, both with sort of a different way of engaging, maybe less typical engagement, office hours, things like that. So I'm wondering if in the process of coming up with this new plan, there's also some thought to the pedagogical or didactic side of things. How do we actually interact with our students in a more fruitful way? Because I know just from myself and from others, there's been a lot of frustration there, and this seems to be an opportunity to kind of address that.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And particularly, that's in just our committee meeting today, we were talking about this thing at the beginning and the thing at the end. And we do see opportunity in that, because it'd be starting from scratch to really think about best pedagogical principles in teaching and learning in order to infuse that into those two courses. As far as the rest of it, I mean, essentially it's, courses there. We understand from the provost that there will be funds to help develop courses, particular courses that might need tweaking, and part of that might be to address exactly the sort of things that you're talking about. So thanks for that input.
Okay, next we have Chris Apps.
Hi, Chris Apps here. I'm a PNA senator from Academic Affairs and Provost. Thanks for sharing this update. My question is not so much regarding the, I guess, substance of the core curriculum, but more so in the planning out the implementation of it. So regarding like the committee membership, I see that you have representatives from the Office of Undergraduate Education on the committee. I'm curious if you've consulted with staff in the Office of the Registrar or record staff and academic support resources, specifically the IT department, and if not, what is your plan to engage those experts? I'm asking because in my work, I work closely with course and program and student records, and with those who support the university's degree audit systems. And I feel that engaging those experts is really vital to understanding the scope of the work a change like this would require, so that these requirements can be enforced in the systems of record, as well as understanding the feasibility of making those updates in the proposed timeline. Speaking for myself, I feel implementing this for fall 2025 admits is ambitious, but that's just from the work I see. And I know that might be getting a little bit ahead, but yeah, I was just wondering how much you've engaged with those experts, and if not, what the plan is.
Yeah, I will say it's not going to happen fall of 2025. That's was a dream a couple of years ago. This thing is on the slow track, but thanks for that input about those experts. So point noted.
Okay, next we have Alicia Cohen.
Thank you. I'm Alicia Cohen from the College of Liberal Arts and the director of the Journalism School. My question, I was a member of this body when we considered the last reform proposal. And my comment is that I remember the robust conversation that we had over on the West Bank in person at the time. And and the failure of what was a lot of work that was put together by a lot of people. And so my comment is sort of a process along with some question and comment along with some of concerns. First, in terms of process, I see your slide and the idea of having a vote and then implementation conversations. I really encourage you to take some of Ellen's comments to heart and to think about how our current curriculum maps on to what the ideal map is before we get to a Senate conversation, because Senate, we cannot vote for an ideal. We have to live as administrators, as people in the College of Liberal Arts that would be dramatically impacted by a change to liberal ed that reduced the number of credit hours. We have to think about what would be real and attainable to do and how this would affect our programming and our planning. And I have complete confidence in the leadership of the university to think through an implementation strategy. But just to be honest, from a budget perspective, but I think we have to think about it from an intellectual perspective. What are our current courses?
30 seconds
For our
remaining,
people, and how can we line it together? Oh dear, I'm almost out of time. The other thing is I'm deeply concerned about these 2 1-credit-hour seminars. The coin of the realm is 3-credit-hour classes and faculty workloads. Ohio State's 1-credit-hour model is a disaster in my opinion. I think that this will be a really difficult thing. I don't know it's good for students. I really think these types of little nitty-gritty things need to be thoroughly thought out. And I'm very concerned if faculty are not the primary teachers of liberal education. I don't think it's the burden of these courses should be overload assignments on P&A instructional staff. This is what happened, and graduate students, this is what happens with first-year seminars sometimes. It means that we have it does not help the quality of our undergraduate program relative to our peers. And so I just urge you to really think we've got to learn from what happened the past. And so I think slower might be better would be my process comment. And I'd be, happy to give more input in that area.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Alicia. Really appreciate that.
Okay, and given time, we have time for one more statements or questions. So Jerry Cohen, go ahead.
So the first thing, Will, is I just wanted to tell you that the scholarship behind this effort is so much better than the 2019 that's impressively good in terms of how you've approached this problem and come forward with a really holistic view of this. So I only have 2, these aren't really critiques, that's why I said other. I have 2 things that I think are worthy of thinking about. One is to put forward a way of circumventing the errors of our current budget model to make the budget impact of this not the driving force for good education. We've had a problem with our budget model in terms of that for as long as I've been here, and that's not that long though. And I think the other one is you correctly said that this is going to apply across all majors, but I would encourage you to have a opt-out procedure for students with very specific needs. But there should be somebody who can look and say, your particular situation is unique enough that it demands a waiver of this or that requirement, as long as it's solid education. So those are my 2. But I do want to say that this, I think you're muted, but but I do want to say that I think it's a great improvement over the previous one.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry, and I appreciate those 2 comments. And I will say that the discussion about transfer students and students coming in with high AP credits, PSEO, those kinds of things, it's likely that would fall under what you said, that something, that they would have to do something different, because otherwise they're not going to be able to get out of here in an appropriate period of time. Yep.
Can I be recognized to move to extend the time of this discussion to include the 4 hands that are up?
I'll second that.
Amber, will you please take the poll?
Yes, give me one moment. This is one I didn't have. Couple more seconds if you wish to vote.
Motion appears to have passed. So Aaron, please go ahead and call the further questioners.
Okay, next we have Terry Caraway.
Hi, I'm Terry Caraway. I'm a senator from the College of Liberal Arts, and I also serve as the Director of Undergraduate Studies in the Department of Political Science. So a lot of my concerns come from my position as the Director of Undergraduate Studies. As you can imagine, doing something like changing our LE system is sort of like turning a battleship. And I'm not hearing from my colleagues clamoring for a change in the LE system. And a lot of the points that people have raised about the proposal, I think my colleagues would share as well. And I think there needs to be a stronger argument made by the committee about the value added and the improvements of this new approach. I think the fact that you say, you know, it's newer, it's going to respond more to what students need. Based on what I've seen today, I'm not convinced of that yet. And so I'm just trying to imagine, how am I going to get my colleagues in political science excited about doing this very hard work and the resources it's going to take from our staff, right, to do this. It's enormous. And we feel, quite frankly, in the College of Liberal Arts, very constrained right now. It's continuous austerity. And then to have this put on top of it with a payoff that's really not clear, I think is asking us for a lot of faith, especially when the proposal that we may be asked to vote on in the spring, as Professor Cohen pointed out, is still not how it's going to actually be experienced and lived at the department level is still very unclear.
Great, thanks so much, Terry. Appreciate those comments.
Okay, next we have Christopher Stallard.
Yes, so I have one point that I want to make and then one question that I want to ask. So first of all, the point, I'd like to sort of provide a counter to the earlier student argument about the number of credits in this course load. My major and the majors of a lot of people I know are already at over 120 credits required to graduate, as I'm sure you well know. And I think that increasing the LibEd total credit requirement at all will just make those problems worse. And I really don't want to see any situations where people are needing like 130 credits to graduate, even if they take the perfectly optimal courses. Yes, by the way, I am the student senator from the College of Science and Engineering. So the person who asked if there are non-CLA people with opinions, this is one. Then my question is regarding the tracks. I want to ask sort of what your committee's been doing to make sure that these like, you know, tracks that you're implementing are going to allow students to have kind of the same diversity of classes to choose as the existing system. So like right now, there's sort of a lot of flexibility. You can mix and match the requirements quite a bit, which is very helpful for students in very credit constrained majors. Whereas if you were requiring to take like 4 classes, all from one of those secondary themes that you provided, I just want to make sure that's not going to decrease the amount of choice and the amount of flexibility that students have.
Yeah, thanks, Christopher. And that is something that the committee is deeply aware of and has been discussing. And I guess the thought is that these definitions of the various buckets, both the areas and the foundations, might be a little bit broader than our current ones, which would, you know, allow for more flexibility in what you're talking about, potentially. But you're absolutely right. Whatever it is, it can't make things harder for students.
Okay, next we have Carl Flink.
Thank you. Carl Flink, Director of the Dance Program and an FCC member. Hi, Will. Thank you to your team and you for your efforts on this. I think a question that I want to raise is I would like to contend that changing the dynamic around these courses and their subject matter is as much about delivery and modeling behavior as it is about the actual content of the plan. And by that, what I mean is if these courses are then consistently taught by single professors from single schools, that we're just once again going into disciplinary silos. And I would really encourage the university to be looking at collaborative teaching models, at least for many of these courses, and taking seriously the idea that having scientists, artists, humanists, business experts teaching classes together and modeling that this is important is going to be as critical as whatever is in these courses. Thanks.
Great, thanks so much for that comment, Carl. Really appreciate it.
Okay, next we have Anoop Jani.
Hi, I hope you hear me well, correct? So I'm Anoop Kalanurjani, an associate professor of animal science in the College of Food, Agriculture, and Natural Resource Sciences. Thank you for putting together this plan. I believe that this curriculum plan would also focus on the changing technological intelligence landscape of our millennials and post-millennial students. For example, our high school students are becoming so diverse, not only societally and socially, but accessing diverse technology and applications of technology. So my question is, how are we prepared to accommodate students from our rural and tribal communities who may not have such diverse balance of school training? And I'm here assuming that there could be a rural urban disconnect as we move along. So would there be any directions or guidelines on developing these foundations and focus areas that they accommodate the needs of those segments of our students as well? These students could return to their homes and build our rural and tribal communities in Minnesota and beyond. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Anoop. But in therein, could lie the value in having student choice, because in that focus area, because certainly some of those students that you mentioned, along with all students, not necessarily those type of students, can have the possibility of choosing something that is of meaning to them and where they're coming from. As far as the educational pedagogy, certainly there's, because whatever it is at the beginning and the end, those courses, should they still stay there, those would be from scratch, right? So there's a lot of opportunity there. The others, that's more of what we want to do across all our courses, at the university.
Yep, thank you.
Yep, thanks for that comment.
I don't see any further questions. Are we ready to proceed then to the next item? I believe so. Thank you.
Can I just make one,
Please
like a 30-second closing?
Yes.
This is a process that needs our entire community to participate in and to weigh in on. And you've got in that slide deck, you've got the names of all the committee members, and many of you may know at least one of them. So contact them, contact me, provide ideas, happy to meet, one-on-one with anyone or in groups, because we want to get this right. So thanks for the participation here, but this is just a little tiny snapshot of participation that we need. President Ettinger, I turn it back to you.
Thank you very much for your presentation and your answers today, and your work and with the committee all along. Item 11 is a discussion about proposed changes to the Regents Scholarship Program, as was previewed by one of the questions to me earlier. Mary Roman Kuhl from the Office of Human Resources is here to tell you about the proposed changes, and I will turn it over to her.
Hi, thank you. So I've got a quick presentation here for everyone, and then we'll open it up for questions and feedback. Sorry, just one second here. Can you all see the presentation? Okay. Hoping that, just looking for confirmation that someone can see this okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So my name is Mary Roman Cool, and I'm the Senior Director of Total Rewards with the Office of Human Resources. And I'm here today with Chrisanne McMahon. She's our Manager of Retirement Programs in OHR. And our goal, we were given the Regents Scholarship Policy to own recently. About a year ago, OHR was looking at all of its policies and had really said we need to get a new owner for these different programs. And I personally requested to take the Regents Scholarship Policy at that time. It had previously been owned by Talent Acquisition, but as I looked at the policy, I felt like it potentially should be kind of thought of a bit differently as a core benefit and I would say a signature benefit that we can uniquely offer at the university that a lot of other employers can't offer. And so it could be a competitive advantage for us. So I took over ownership of the policy and my phone started to ring. People were contacting me frequently about the problems and concerns that they saw with the policy. I think it was all out of an interest to improve the program. And what we heard are kind of four main things. We talked with the governance groups. We had a paper that was drafted by Adolfo and just had met with many different stakeholders, including people from tax and IT. And there was pages of feedback, but about four key themes emerged. People were saying, make this program more accessible for everyone, simplify the policy, simplify the process. A lot of comments about a lot of signatures and red tape to get access to this benefit. Also, would you please trust employees to use this program appropriately? We'll talk about that in a little bit here. And then improve awareness of tax implications. So these were the four main areas of feedback. So one thing I learned after taking over this policy is that there are many, many parties that make the Regents Scholarship Program run and work. And so when we started looking at making improvements to it, we needed to get a really broad team of people from all those different areas together so that if we had a suggestion in one aspect of the policy, it didn't, cause a problem for someone else in a different manner that helps run the program. So as you'll see on this list, we had people that met for about 6 months from tax, payroll, our governance groups, IT, One Stop, of course, OHR, our contact center. And we met for about 6 months. The P&A Civil Service and Faculty Consultative Committee representatives came and joined us for about the last, 6 to 8 weeks. So the first team really developed all the ideas and the improvement suggestions and the new wording. And then the governance team really sat with us every other week in meetings about 3 hours long each and went through those documents, gave us further feedback. We kept making revisions, real iterative process to get to the solutions you'll see here in a minute. So the first thing is reducing those approvals that are needed for using the Regents Scholarship Policy. The first thing we did is we said supervisor signatures will no longer be required on any forms unless you're taking classes during working hours. So if you're going to take classes during your normal scheduled hours, for sure, talk with your supervisor, get their approval for that. But otherwise, an employee could work for us and take evening classes at St. Thomas, and we're not asking to know their business about that or ask for their signature. So why would we make it harder for our employees to use our own program here at the university? So supervisor signature no longer required. Used to require a second level supervisor signature. That's no longer required under any circumstance, and also no longer requiring HR lead to sign the forms. So just much more simplified process in that respect. There's a few areas of expansion for the program too. If you recall, it used to speak about a phrase like typically only one course per semester is considered appropriate or something like that. We removed that wording. Again, if a person wants to take as many classes as they are able to do and manage their workload, that is completely fine. So that wording is removed. we used to say that people on the layoff list could take up to 2 courses per term, but they had to be job related. We were not auditing that. So there's probably many instances where people followed that, and there's instances where they took classes that weren't job related, and we weren't auditing that. We didn't see the purpose for that. So we just say now that two classes per term is a limit, and then they can be whatever courses you choose. And then we also used to have people have the benefit prorated if people left in termed employment before the term ended, and we're not doing that any longer. Again, we were notified in some instances. We are guessing that we're probably also not notified in many instances. We weren't auditing for that. And so we're just kind of the mindset that, you know, it's fine. They can finish out the courses, and then that will be the end of the scholarship for the individual after that point. Tax form changes. The definition of what's taxable and not taxable is better defined now, so people can understand when they will see a tax implication from a value of a class that they took. And there's examples now of how an employee will see the tax, like when they'll see the tax occur, generally the size of that value that they'll be taxed on, and how it'll be taken out over a series of paychecks. We've gotten some feedback that when people saw the dollar amount, it came out of 4 or 5 checks. That was a setback for them, and they weren't prepared for it. So now we're providing that more upfront. And then HR lead approval will no longer be required on tax exclusion applications. Other changes, we want to create a document that outlines all those key parties I mentioned that support the Regents Scholarship and the question set that each of them are responsible for answering. We feel that'll help individuals behind the scenes get people to the right a doorstep for their question, and it'll help employees find their way independently as well. We want to increase promotion of the benefit and also increase promotion and awareness of a post-secondary childcare assistance grant. One of the pieces of feedback was that people wished we had a way to help offset childcare expenses while they took these classes. And the post-secondary childcare assistance grant is open to anyone who's a resident in Minnesota who earns below a certain level of income for their household. They can qualify for childcare assistance. And then finally, we recommend renaming the policy to something like the Regents Tuition Benefit Program, or maybe even better, an Employee Tuition Benefit Program. It was the work group's reflection on the title Regent Scholarship. We wondered if perhaps employees looked at it and thought, oh, this is a scholarship. It goes to a chosen few that are very, very top of the game in terms of academics. The word regents are used. They're all independently and collectively very nice people, but maybe people would view that as not very approachable, a very formal, formal group of people with a high position in the university, and then awarding the scholarship to chosen few. Was that in and of itself enough to cause a person maybe to back away and not realize that they qualified for this benefit just by being an employee? So we're thinking about changing the name. That's getting routed now for consideration. Then we changed our process. We did kind of a lean process mapping with swim lanes and looked at how the current flow of the request form makes its way through the university. And it was like a plate of spaghetti. And so then we streamline that. And what we're really going to have happen from this point forward is we have a new form. It's much more simple to complete for the employee. The employee will submit that form to our OHR contact center. They'll verify that the person is employed with the university at 0.75 FTE or greater. They may route to that supervisor in those rare circumstances for signature, and then it will make its final way to the one-stop student services. The employee will be copied rather than them having to take it through all of the channels. They'll just go along for the ride, so to speak. They'll be able to see if something gets stopped at a certain point or if it's making its way through. And then once we get this kind of settled in place, we'll look to automate this or tech enable the process. There were things that we were asked to solve or provide with the Regents Scholarship that we felt were out of scope or we could address in other ways. And I didn't want to not mention those. Care very much about showing that we're accountable and responsive to the things that we're asked to look into. So this is a list of things we deem to be out of scope. We were asked if we could expand the benefit from a 75% of courses being covered to 100% for those employees who already have a bachelor's degree. Or could we expand the benefit to dependents of employees? These are things that we actually want to consider. We just felt that they'd be out of scope for this first comprehensive review of the policy. And it's really more about a benefit enhancement. Most of you are very familiar with our workforce reinvestment project that we're responding to currently right now as we speak. And that proposal for how we look into that will be in that document. So hasn't been forgotten. It's just maybe a second phase here. We're asked to ensure that training occurs for all admissions staff, or that we provide a dedicated resource within admission for non-traditional students. And that maybe they could be doing more training on how to manage Regent Scholarship applications. So we talked with them. They are trained to handle all those admission questions, including those with Regent Scholarship applications. But they did say that with the new process, their role has been greatly minimized. It's a very small part of the puzzle, and they feel that people are adequately trained to do that. So if we continue to see things there, we can dig into that more, but we felt the training of that staff was really outside of the policy per se. We're asked to expand the benefit to cover CCAP courses. The policy really applies to credit-bearing courses. The CCAP's discount will absolutely still be available. Could even, work on potentially, is a discount the right discount, but it just wouldn't be part of the Regent Scholarship policy. We're asked to allow the use of professional development funds to cover Regent Scholarship expenses. So what this kind of means is if you owe 25% of the course cost, could a department take their professional development funds and just pay that on behalf of an employee? And we said that the right solution for that, if that's a big enough interest and the university can afford to do that, it should be solved in a different manner. It should be solved by changing the benefit from 75 to 100%, because that's then equitably applied to all of our employees. The risk we run if we let this happen on a department by department basis is you'll get different departments allowing different things, maybe potentially worse, the same department, let's say allowing this for one employee and not for another. Maybe one person's just a little bit better at advocating for themselves. And those are the type of inequities we don't want to have happen. We should solve that in a different manner. And finally, we were asked if we could expand the Native American tuition waiver to dependents. Great suggestion, just not part of the Regent Scholarship policy per se. Here's our timeline, kind of the process we went through. We are presenting now to governance groups for feedback here in November. We'll integrate that feedback and present the policy to review committees in December and February. And then we'll post the new materials and promote the policy changes in March. And I think it's important to note that we want to, in April and beyond, we want to keep looking at this policy. We don't want it to sit for as long as it has sat before we make changes. We want to keep it more fresh and alive on an ongoing basis. So we'll keep listening for feedback and looking to continuously improve the policy, the process, and everything related to it. Okay, any questions?
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mary. As a reminder, if you have a question or comment, please raise your hand and send the chat to Aaron Heath, stating whether your comment is pro, con, or other. And I will again defer to Aaron to call on people in the appropriate order. Aaron, please proceed.
Okay, so first on here we have Jerry Cohen, but Jerry, are you pro, con, or other?
Well, pro to most of it, but I go say other.
Okay, go ahead.
So Mary, I think this is really good that you're going through these kind of things. And I think turning the that 25% tax that Provost Sullivan imposed is another one of his bad ideas and needs to be reversed. The only thing I would quiver with over the period of time that we have before you get rid of that 25%, and I'm rooting for you to do that, because it doesn't cost anything for me to have a extra student in my class, actually. It's just a warm seat. But the 25%, for those of us who are funded on National Science Foundation grants, we have something called Broader Impacts, which is an important part of getting our grants. And Broader Impacts allows me to pay that 25% if the university would let me do it. But the university doesn't let me do it, which means that I'm denied the opportunity to have a really legitimate activity that would improve employees within my group to get additional education using federal funds to pay that 25%. It doesn't make any sense. I can understand if you want equity and all kinds of things, but we as scientists have to, we have other authorities we have to deal with. And if you deny me the opportunity to do a Broader Impacts because of a policy which is narrow-minded and limited, then I can't help people that deserve it. And so I just throw that up as something that ought to be on your list of things to consider, because it's not just equity, sometimes it's opportunity.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. I appreciate that thought.
Okay, Scott Creer, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Mary, for taking my question. When we started talking about this a few years ago, it was in relation to access for those that don't yet have a bachelor's degree. And looking at the committee makeup that you shared in the presentation, it doesn't look like there was much representation from those individuals who don't yet have a bachelor's degree who may want to seek one at the university. And in this body as a whole, for the most part, we all have at least a bachelor's degree as part of the shared governance group speaking right now. And so the question is, I see in here that there was 100% tuition cost for eligible employees pursuing their first baccalaureate degree, but yet not yet admitted, trying to take prerequisite courses, and that was removed. And so I have a question as to why that was removed rather than actually addressing some of the access issues. And then my question earlier for President Ettinger was about how Hormel specifically they're expanding their tuition program to cover 100% of the cost for bachelor's degrees through partner universities. And they're doing that in hopes to be competitive. And so how can this policy be more competitive with the marketplace, specifically for those in frontline positions who do not yet have a bachelor's degree, where we're having the hardest time with employee retention and maintaining those positions as well? Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer the first part of the question. So when this work group got started, I'm actually glad that you raised the question too, Scott. We had on our agenda that we wanted to figure out a way that we could expand the benefit to be 100% for people who are seeking admission to a degree program, hadn't yet gotten admitted. We could get them 100% on maybe we had first said maybe on their prerequisite coursework. So what are the prerequisites for the course they're interested in or degree they're interested in? And how could we cover that at 100%? So we set off, that was in our mind's eye. We were, I would say, a 10 out of 10 in terms of motivation to make that happen. As we got going with our process, that became difficult. And Professor Brown, who I think is on the call today, was part of our work group. And he had suggested, what we learned is that there's such a different set of prerequisite by degree program that it would be hard to identify what those classes would be. We'd have to have some party that would say, here's the person, the degree they're seeking, those prerequisites. They have to track that, manage it. And so then we thought, well, maybe the right way to go about it is we could find a common set, mostly common set of prerequisite that cut across a lot of different degrees, your science, your math, whatever it might be. So let's try that. And we wanted to get kind of a common set for all of our campus locations. And I met with all of the heads of admissions for those colleges. And what I learned is that we have different credit amounts for like a science, a math, depending on which campus you are enrolled at. And it became really difficult, number one, to figure out how to get to a common set of classes. We then said, let's get to a common set by college or campus, by campus. And as we continued the discussions, it became increasingly clear that even that had its problems, because a person, let's say if they got admitted into a degree program, then there's some of those degree programs that have very few prerequisites, some that have a lot, some that vary quite a bit from one another. We could get into a situation where a person has invested a lot of their time, not a lot of their money, but a lot of their time taking these classes, only to find out when they're admitted that it hasn't gotten them any farther or very far in their degree program. And then, how does that shake out? We felt like that could just almost be a worse impact. But we said for today's purpose, we want to get these improvements in place. But that's where it gets to my comment about how we don't want to set it and forget it. We want to keep that question alive and in front of us to figure out how could we solve for that. We just couldn't get it solved here in November, December, but we're not giving up on it. We feel like that's a really important thing we'd like to do. Ultimately, we have to recognize the person still does have to get admitted into that degree program at some point. For some people, that won't happen. And that's another reality here too. But we want to just get people as close to that doorstep and through that door as we're able to. But we did end up having to remove that just because we could not figure out how to solve that right now.
Okay, Stacy, go ahead.
And thanks, Mary. I'd also like to thank the committee for doing this work to improve the Region Scholarship Program, hopefully soon to be the Employee Tuition Benefit Program for our university community. I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I appreciate the outcomes of this project, but would like to share some feedback about the out of scope issues you shared, specifically about the second degree. I'd appreciate it if the university considers the expansion of this program to be inclusive of a 100% support for second degrees as soon as possible, as the current and proposed iterations of this program still only supports a 75% benefit towards a second degree. Our university is full of talent and our business is education. Many of our talented people do not have the resources to afford the 25% tuition and fees, which is deeply frustrating for many, myself included. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Very well noted.
Okay, Ellen, please go ahead.
Thank you. Mary, I'm just wondering, are there any tuition benefit plans that include emeriti faculty, and particularly those who have served this institution for a long time, 20, 30, 40 years?
Now you've caught me off guard. I do not have anything in my mind's eye or plans of that nature, but I'd be interested to hear more about what your thoughts are on that.
Well,
either during this meeting or outside of it. Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk privately, but basically, a lot of faculty continually retool during their teaching careers and don't necessarily want to leave academe behind once they retire. And so we do recognize long service. For instance, the Regents Professorship is awarded to faculty who have been here for all or almost all of their careers. So I'm wondering if there is a kind of tuition benefit thing for faculty who may want to take courses after retirement. And of course, they're not working 100% at that point. So they would be disqualified from your program?
It's a very good question. And I'm just going to quickly, if you don't mind, I'm going to take your name down and maybe we could connect via email if that would be okay with you.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'll put my email in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Mhm.
Okay, Alicia, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have two quick questions. First, a comment that I think it's great to try to think about how to remove barriers. And one barrier that I think should be reviewed is why even have a director or department chair sign off? And I give this example I had an executive office assistant who was with me for a bit who wanted to partake in the Regents program. Thought it would be great. I thought it would be a great way to retain them. They end up moving to another office. They still get to, keep my signature and stay in the program and whatnot. I don't know that it's any of my business as a director or chair to micromanage someone's education outside. I mean, it would be different if the classes conflicted with work schedule, but that shouldn't dictate whether the scholarship's available. That should more dictate the work schedule. And then the second comment is, I think this was an issue before, and I don't know if it's been addressed. I admit to not following all the policy changes, but I'm concerned about the benefit for contract faculty and or P&A instructional staff that are not on formal continuing appointments, but very frankly have a history of working for the university year after year after year on these types of contracts. And perhaps considering anyone who history rather than continuity of contract, meaning they've been hired for more than 1 year, would be another way to more fully give those folks support. I'm on the term faculty and contract subcommittee of one of our groups, and I just think that the more we can do to support benefits to that attract the best people even for those positions would be worthwhile.
Yeah, we rely on those positions heavily. So of course, and I think I'm not sure, we might have things more congruent between us. But for the supervisor's signature, that's only required if the person wants to take the class during their work hours. So they'd have to be kind of excused from work. So otherwise, that supervisor's signature in all other instances is gone. So I don't know if that answers the question or not. And then I believe term faculty would be eligible. So they would be eligible. The one thing that we have to do is if the person wants to take a class, let's say during the summer, just a signature from the managers saying they anticipate that the person would be back in the fall. But that would be the only other time that signature would be needed, is just to confirm that they think they'll be back in the fall. And like you said, for a lot of term faculty, that's an absolute yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and our final comment is from Angelique. Go ahead, please.
Hi, everybody. So I have been here at the university as an employee since 2014, and I have greatly enjoyed it. I could not afford to go to school here, even on the Regents scholarship, because of the tax situation and the book situation. And that most of the courses, because I worked overnight for a couple of years here, I couldn't attend them because they were all in person. There wasn't anything available online, either through a bachelor's course or the master's course. So I had to go to another university to do my bachelor's and my master's online. My education wasn't any different. I'm still as qualified as everyone else in my unit, but I feel like there's a loss of being able to assist and provide a chance and an opportunity for education and for people to get ahead that are in families that work odd jobs around here at the university with odd times. And we do know they're all over. And that this is a missed opportunity. And I think they really need to kind of look at, how much, when I say it was more expensive to attend here, that's a shame because my children were also not able to attend here. So if I couldn't afford it on a scholarship, I can't imagine anybody being able to send their children here not on a scholarship. And that's all all I have to say about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Mm-hmm.
think that was our last question. Mary, did you have any concluding comments or?
No, I don't think so. But I really appreciate people's comment, and I can tell that this benefit, just like the people that worked on this project team too, people at the university care about this policy. They care about this policy. I'll call it a benefit. People care about this greatly. So yeah, we're doing a lot of positive changes that we can make right now, but we won't quit looking at it. We will keep digging to make sure that we get the best outcome that we can. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next item concerns a new policy implementing the state of Minnesota's Earned Sick and Safe Leave Law and has been presented for information. Item number 13 concerns old business, and there is no old business for the University Senate. Item 14 concerns new business for the University Senate. Please note that any new business will be referred to committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting and present. Is there any new business? Yes, Neil, please go ahead.
Yes, hello. I'm Al Drabeck, CLA Senator. I'd like to introduce a resolution.
I'm sorry. Go ahead and proceed.
All right. So would you like me to present now, or are we gonna? I sent out an email yesterday, and I sent an email today to all of the senators here. Hopefully, I did it via copying and pasting emails off the website, so hopefully everyone's got it. Regardless, everyone should have the resolution. Everyone should know what it's about. We also sent out an informational packet describing what it is, that type of thing. And well, are we gonna vote on it? I'm a little bit confused.
yeah,
Can
so you-
someone-
Yeah,
If you
I'll just
make a motion,
clarify.
go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, sorry, as the parliamentarian,
Yeah.
the standard rules for University Senate are new business is automatically referred to committee unless the senators currently present so make and approve a motion for immediate consideration. So
Right, well-
a senator can make a motion for immediate consideration. It needs a second, and then we would all vote on that. If that passes, further discussion ensues.
All right. Well, I would like to move for immediate consideration.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, saw one pop up. I've seen a couple pop up. So let's proceed with the vote. Amber, we'll work on that.
Point of information, all of us did not receive what we're talking about right now, so there needs to be some clarity as to what exactly we're voting on. So Neil, can you just describe, please, what you're asking?
Yeah, sure. Okay, that's concerning that not all of you received this.
Yeah, I think just a really brief summary of your of your current
Yep, this is a resolution calling for the ceasefire. A ceasefire and the release of all captives in Israel and Palestine until a peaceful and internationally lawful resolution to the conflict is agreed upon. That's what we're asking the University Senate to take the position of. And we're going to offer our own friendly amendment to it to make it a statement rather than a resolution, given some feedback that we've received over the past 24 plus hours. Yeah, I think, it's a ceasefire resolution. So I'm sorry,
That's good. Well, we'll
I
proceed.
didn't prepare more for this. I was not expecting.
That's okay. We'll proceed with the vote on whether the body of the Senate would like to bring this up today versus it going to committee.
And just because a couple of people have asked in the chat, it requires a 2/3 majority, which is noted in the top of the poll here.
Hi, Amber. This is your colleague, Jeanette Poole. I'm just letting you know that not everybody's seeing the poll.
Everyone, can you look behind your Zoom screens? It is launched, so
Okay, thanks.
try to minimize everything else and see if you can find it.
I'll just note I did receive it, and thank you for sharing the link to the resolution, Amber. I am one of the senators who did receive Neil's information packet, and a lot of great work went into the resolution. So I would just like to, emphasize that everybody take a look at that.
I think, let's see, I'm going to end this poll and relaunch it since people are saying that they can't see it. So those of you who voted, I'm sorry, please vote again. I'm ending the poll now. And I'm going to probably have to quickly create a new poll. Let me see if I can just relaunch it. Okay, it is relaunched now. I'm going to give 10 more seconds if you wish to vote. There being 86 ayes, 60 nays, and that is 59% in favor. That motion does not carry.
Just to clarify for parliamentary procedures, that doesn't mean that this is done and there's no further conversation. It simply means it goes to the next, and Mark, please correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I believe SCC meeting for discussion and can come back before the Senate.
I believe that's correct.
Is there any other new business? Hearing none, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Amber, please initiate this poll.
Couple more seconds if you wish to vote. There being 134 ayes and 5 nays, that motion carries.
We are adjourned. Thank you all for your participation today.
Chair, we are ready for the faculty senate.
Great, I now call the Faculty Senate to order. First of all, item 2 concerns administrative responses to the Faculty Senate actions and is presented for information, and there are none pending. Item 3 is the approval of the minutes from the Faculty Senate meeting on November 2nd, 2023. Amber, please initiate the poll.
Couple more seconds. There being 80 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Great, thank you very much. Item 4 concerns proposed changes to the Faculty Senate Constitution, bylaws, and rules. Professor B will present this topic. Please proceed.
Thank you, President Ettinger. I'm actually going to pass laterally to Amber Bathke shortly. And I just wanted to say that this is sort of the Faculty Senate catching up with all of the other Senates again. And so in terms of some mostly minor revisions we need to make to the Constitution, bylaws, and rules. And so, Amber, if you can, I will hand that over to you for a quick presentation.
Absolutely. Just let me get my presentation up here. Okay, it's loading very slowly. I've been having some internet problems, so hopefully I don't cut out. Still not loaded. All right. I'm going to stop and try to launch it.
It looks like it's trying to, no.
It's starting, Amber.
Okay. I couldn't tell how far along it was.
Slowly though, Amber, I don't know if that's because of the internet trouble you're having. It's still loading on my screen.
Yeah, mine as well. Well, let's
Amber, do
see.
you want to send it to, email it to a colleague and have one of us try to upload it?
That would be great. It is a slide presentation, so I should be able to just send it to you quickly. I hope.
Thanks for your patience, everybody.
Do we want to change the order of the agenda while I'm having this problem? I don't want to take up time. Is that a possibility?
I think that seems like it would make sense. We could, I guess, go to item 5 and come back to item 4 if there's no objection. Well, item 5 is the approval of the 2026-2027 academic calendar for the Twin Cities and Rochester campuses. Just seeking if there's any discussion related to this. Yes, Ellen.
Thank you. I received an email today, which may or may not be correct, but it basically said that there was a discussion of whether first day of classes would fall on Rosh Hashanah, which is one of 2 major Jewish holidays. And so I'm wondering if we can have some information on that.
see you popping back on. Provost Croson, perhaps you have some information?
Possibly. I'm not sure if Catherine is here and she might want to speak to that.
I am. I think in our meeting this morning, I think the next overlap with Rosh Hashanah is 2032.
That is my understanding.
Okay. So that means that we won't have the first day of classes falling on a major Jewish holiday?
Until 2032.
Okay. And even then, I think that we need to solve that problem because from my point of view, it would discriminate against Jewish students and faculty who would be forced to choose whether to attend the first day of class, which students are required to do, and whether faculty would be required to teach or not teach the first day of classes.
There is a committee handling that, Ellen, that
Okay.
is the exact issue that you just articulated. So thank you for underlining the importance of that.
Thanks, Catherine.
Any further discussion on item 5? I'm not seeing any, so I'm supposed to ask Amber to initiate the poll, but Amber is the one trying to figure out whether we can get item 4 back up, so I don't know whether that works. Up there it is.
Few more seconds if you wish to vote. Okay, there being 77 ayes and 1 nay, that motion carries.
Amber, would we be ready to go back to item 4, or should I proceed with others?
Jeanette, Aaron, or Jessica, can you share screen?
Sure, I can give it a try.
Thank you, Jeanette.
It seems to be there.
Okay, can everybody see things okay?
Yep. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, you can just go right to the next screen. And so this, as Mark said, is a continuation of a larger project that was a comprehensive review of the entire University Senate governing documents. So University Senate governing documents, including the faculty, P&A, civil service, and student Senate documents. This is the last step. All of the other Senates have approved all of the changes that are very similar to these that we're proposing today. And so just a little bit of background on this. We began this in 2019, if you can believe it. So this is a momentous occasion. That's the University Senate office began going through kind of the documents with a fine-tooth comb at that point. And then in 2021, a review committee was charged to look at those proposed changes and discuss other ones. And Mark B., who was the vice chair of the FCC at the time, represented the faculty. Jean Otto represented civil service. Jeremy Jenkins represented P&A, and Gunnar Fromm, who was, I think, the student Senate vice chair at that time, represented the students. And actually, I believe that's on the next slide, Jeanette. I'm probably getting ahead of myself. Perfect. All right, so the review purpose and process, the areas of focus included addressing outdated language. An example of that would be like we changed he or she to their, codify current practices or modify procedures to align with common practice. So things like that we've just always been doing a certain way, but they were not quite matching the process in our documents. Technical and grammatical changes, and to create uniformity across the Senates where possible. Out of scope were changes to committee charges, because those should come from the committees themselves, and any changes in Senate or committee membership composition. Next slide.
It's taking a second, Amber.
Okay, oh, there we go. Oh, okay. So to proceed to the overview of the proposed changes, the changes to the Constitution, and this is the major one here, is that the special meeting provision. Currently, the Constitution allows for the faculty Senate, as I said, all the others have been changed already, allows individual senators to request a special meeting if there's 10 senators to request a meeting, but that would go through the FCC to actually call that meeting. The provision that we propose changes that to be 10% of the body, so that increases it to, I think, like maybe 16 members, but then they have the power to actually compel a meeting. The other major change to the Constitution is clarifies who can make motions at Faculty Senate meetings. For some reason, the current document said that any faculty member could make a motion. And while we welcome anyone to attend, making motions and voting is typically reserved for senators. Next slide. Okay, so changes to the bylaws, clarify language around chief of staff, as the chief of staff was prevented from being a member of the Senate. We kind of discussed this as a group and interpreted it to mean that it really just means the president's chief of staff. It doesn't mean that anyone with that in their title can't serve. So that is proposed to change. It clarifies the procedure for selecting the vice chair of the Faculty Senate and allows the vice chair to preside at will rather than only when the president's not available. So there are times when it might be awkward or inappropriate for the president to preside, but they're technically available. So we want to be able to have the vice chair preside during those times. It contains a recommendation to broaden the general language around conflict of interest. There's only a really kind of random specific provision around conflicts of interest right now. And so we just propose to change that to say, any conflict of interest, and that the Committee on Committees should be the one that decides that when appointing to Faculty Senate committees. And then finally, adding that only voting members of committees may remain in a closed meeting unless designated by the chair. So there was some question about whether ex officio members who were non-voting remained by default or only at the chair's discretion. Next slide, please. And then the proposed changes to the rules actually don't relate to the broader overview that I was talking about earlier, as we actually had those approved in the spring. So this is some cleanup from changes to the FCC's membership composition that resulted in this change that's needed in the rules. Next slide, please. So these are the thresholds for amending. I'm not going to go through this in detail because the actual numbers are in the docket, but just so you have an idea, the Constitution is going to be harder to change. The rules, hopefully not that hard. There are some provisions for what happens if the changes are not proposed at this, or pardon me, are not approved at this meeting. And basically they are, depending on the threshold, we can either send it out electronically or put it on the docket for the next meeting. So when we see the outcome of these votes, we will determine what to do next. Next slide. All right, that's it. Questions? And Jeanette, you can take the slide deck down. Thank you.
Okay, we will now proceed to the vote. The motions are on the table and no seconds are needed from the floor. Motion 1 is to approve amendments to the Faculty Senate Constitution and requires 100 yes votes for approval. Amber, please initiate the poll.
Couple more seconds. Okay, there being 89 ayes and 1 nay, that does not reach the threshold for being approved at this meeting. It's not altogether unsurprising, so we will take that up in the future.
Okay. Motion number 2 is to approve amendments to the Faculty Senate bylaws, and this requires 76 yes votes for approval. Amber, please initiate the poll.
Few more seconds. There being 87 ayes and 1 nay, that does carry.
Thank you. Motion number 3 is to approve amendments to the Faculty Senate rules, and this requires a simple majority of those present and voting for approval. Amber, please initiate this poll.
Few more seconds. With 88 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Thank you. I believe that concludes item number 4. We've already done item number 5. So item number 6 is the approval of amendments to 2 educational policies and the retirement of 2 other educational policies. We will do 2 separate votes, and neither requires a motion or a second from the floor. But first, is there any discussion about the amended policies? Seeing any? So we'll go ahead and initiate what I understand to be 2 polls.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. There being 80 ayes and 5 nays, that motion carries.
Very much. I believe that concludes item number 6. Item number
Sorry,
7. I'm sorry.
there's the other poll.
Oh yeah, of course. The second vote. Sorry.
No, no problem. A few more seconds if you wish to vote. There being 80 ayes and 1 nay, that motion carries.
Very good. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 7, which is a presentation on a report from the SEC on faculty compensation. Professor B, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Ettinger. I'm sharing my screen and I hope everyone can see it. And if it's not fitting, you can go to the view options at the top and get it to fit. I want to be mindful of the time. And so I'll try to go through this pretty quickly. Everyone should have received a copy of the report already. Thank you for those of you who have clicked on the basically infomercial about the report. Last check, we were up to about 930 views of the video. So thank you for your interest. I want to start with acknowledging fantastic help from the rest of the Faculty Consultative Committee. And I'm just realizing now I didn't formally introduce myself. Mark B., I chair the FCC. Everybody in the FCC read multiple drafts, gave me a lot of good feedback. I'm highlighting a few folks here who sort of went 1 or 2 steps beyond with extra meetings, input on various things. Especially want to thank Jen Goodnow, who spent a lot of time in the archives looking up data for us. I also want to thank the administration. We shared an early draft with the administration asking for input and feedback. I mean, the report is independent of the administration, but we got some good feedback, constructive criticism. And one of the important things to me was to sort of settle early on any sort of discussion about the data. I didn't want to get sort of bogged down in arguments about whether the data were sort of accurately reflecting anything, and we didn't get any pushback on that. I want to make 2 more points. One is, in the report and in today's discussion, I'm going to use the term faculty as broadly as possible to mean all term faculty, regular faculty, and P&A faculty with sort of primary teaching appointments. I also want to emphasize that in keeping with the workforce reinvestment resolution, that this report is offered in solidarity, not competition with other employee groups for whom compensation is also a significant concern. And I'll say more about that in a second. So just a very quick origin story. You all know about the workforce reinvestment resolution. It was taking shape in fall 22, spring 23. And during the conversations, consultation that ongoing about that resolution, we heard a lot of different topics that were of importance to everyone, but one that sort of kept bubbling up to the top was compensation. And so as we worked on drafts, we made compensation the very first sort of principle in the workforce reinvestment resolution. It was in this context when the FCC met with several members of the Board of Regents and had a conversation. We had decided that compensation was one of the things we wanted to talk about. And it was a good conversation. There was a lot of empathy, a lot of concern that was genuine, I think. And sort of the way the meeting ended was something like, well, we'll just have to look at the data. And that sort of clicked because other employee groups, civil service and P&A, had previously created reports on issues of compensation, and the faculty didn't have anything similar. And so we decided as a committee, we started looking into it, and it sort of spiraled into what you got in your inboxes earlier this week. So just a few quick words about the report itself in terms of what it does and doesn't do. It's meant to provide supporting data for the workforce reinvestment resolution. It doesn't replace anything. It's a complement to it. It analyzes publicly available data, and these are the same data sets. This is from the American Association of University Professors. I probably got the two A's mixed up. The AAUP from their faculty compensation survey. It's the same data that the Office of Human Resources has been presenting to the board recently in the last sort of several years. The main sort of thing the report does is examine how competitive are faculty salaries, and it does this across the system, across faculty ranks, peer groups, through time. And the reason we focused on competitiveness relative to peers is that this is how board policy is phrased. In terms of the board strives to offer competitive salary and compensation packages relative to peer institutions and other labor markets. Now, the report also examines what I'll call some impacts on institutional quality. I'll say a few words about that. We tried in the report to identify some sort of myths and misconceptions that keep coming up when there are conversations about faculty compensation of other employees. We want to kind of just get those off the table. And then it makes some specific recommendations for moving forward. Now, what the report does not do is compare salaries across units or discipline, or explore issues of salary equity, or include medical school faculty. And there's a very specific reason for all of these, and it's that we didn't have access to the data to do that. These are all important things, I think, that should be done. We just couldn't do it. It was beyond the scope of this report. The report also does not advocate for a specific pay raise in terms of a percentage amount. In fact, it doesn't make any recommendation of that sort whatsoever. The problem is bigger than we could probably do with that anyway. And so the recommended things we need to do to move forward are slightly different. The report itself is structured in terms of some snapshots of the Morris and Rochester campus, which are represented by shared governance, and then it drills down pretty deeply into some data for the Twin Cities campus. So very quickly, some data on Morris and Rochester. What I'm going to show you in the next graph is sort of the measure of the percentage difference between sort of our average salary at Morris and the average salary of the peers identified in recent reports by Human Resources, the Office of Human Resources, to the board. And these are ranked from those highest or greatest compared to our salaries relative to ours. And so you can see here where Morris ranks near the bottom on average. And this is a very gross average. There's nothing sort of very granular about this. The peers averaged about 13% higher than the faculty at Morris. Here, the same data for the Rochester campus. And Rochester reported only assistant and associate professors, and so we focused on those two faculty ranks. And so here again, the peers were about 9 to 13% higher in this data set. As I mentioned, well, we looked at one other comparison for some of the system campuses that didn't include the Twin Cities. Our mission is sort of very different as a large comprehensive research university. And so we compared us, meaning the other 4 system campuses, to them, in that case, them being Minnesota State. And so here are at the top the 7 4-year universities and colleges in the Minnesota State system, and all of the 2 years. And we just show you where sort of Duluth, Crookston, Morris, and Rochester rank relative to the Minnesota State system. And you can see that on average, and again, this is a global average, salaries at the University of Minnesota were 13 to about 29% lower. As I said, we did a lot of sort of looking at past peer institutions and also present ones. And one of the things it took us 9 months to put this report together. And it was sort of discovering that there had been a number of changes of peer groups over the past 30 years. And so we looked at all of those. And I'll just say, and I won't go into any detail, but the report itself does, is that each time there was a change of peer group, faculty salaries on the Twin Cities campus were compared to what I would argue is sort of a less selective group of peers. And not surprisingly, our relative salary appeared to go up every time a peer group change happened. But if you look sort of over time, over the last 15 years, particularly, our salaries have been declining relative to every peer group. I want to just focus quickly on 2 peer groups. One of those is the top 30 research universities. This was a peer group that was identified by essentially a task force set up in 1984, jointly between the provost and the chair of the FCC at the time, called the Compensation Working Group. And one of the things they recommended was that the University of Minnesota should consider itself one of the top 30 research universities in the country. And here are the other 29 that were listed, or that they settled on. It was apparent that as early as 1986, I think it was the next year, the university started formally using this group of universities as peers for benchmarking faculty salaries. And I just want to point out this quote. I like it a lot. It does a couple of things. I'll just read it. Right. The university's goal since 1997 has been to bring the average faculty salary from the bottom quartile to the mean of the campus's peer cohorts. So a couple things to note here. One, there's an established peer group that faculty and the administration had jointly agreed to. There's a specified position within that peer group that we want to go from the bottom quartile to the mean of the campuses, right? And so this was 1997. We wanted to look at, well, how have pay increases changed between 1997 and presently for these institutions? And so what I'm going to show you in the next graph is sort of an inflation-adjusted change in salary between 1997 and 2022. And so what you can see, pay increases for both private and public peers have far outpaced our own over the last 25 or so years. We also had some longitudinal data for this group going back to 2002, and that's what I'm showing here. Right, so this is the same group of peers, again, inflation-adjusted data, showing the cumulative change in salary after adjusting for inflation between 2002 and 2021. Now, I have put a pin here in 2008 because, as you can see in the data, there's an inflection point there, right? Everybody's going up, suddenly everybody goes down. Everybody knows what happened in 2008. That was the financial crisis. The reason I'm doing that, and I want to just keep that 2008 date in mind, is that other institutions appear to have recovered from it in a way that we didn't. And so by 2021, spending power of our salaries seem to have gone down compared to 2002. Very quickly, I want to show you some data for a second peer group that the university switched to in around 2006. It was again part of another strategic initiative. These are the top 10 public research universities. And so if you fire up Google and you search for UMN peer institutions, you will find this university webpage outlining these 10 public research universities as our peers. And also on that webpage, if you look carefully, you'll find this statement, which is interesting. It talks about, I'll just read it. The Twin Cities Campus Comparison Group includes the very best public research universities in the United States. And in using this peer group as a benchmark, the campus intentionally measures itself against the highest standards in the nation. So we looked at how our average faculty salaries compared to these 10 institutions, and that's what's shown in this graph. And these are data from 2002 to 2021. And you see that prior to 2008, we were a few percentage points above. Starting in 2008, we go negative relative to the group, so that our salaries were, by 2021, about 12, 13, 14% lower. And that's over a 20-year period, that's about almost 20% drop in our relative ranking in terms of the average salaries with this peer group. If you look at data in 2022, it looks like this. We're at the very bottom of this group now. And these are cost of living adjusted data. It doesn't really matter whether you adjust cost of living or not. If you look at separate faculty ranks, I think it was full professors and associate professors at the very bottom, assistant professors and instructors, lecturers maybe sort of next to last. And so, against these peers, we're not, they're arguably the best and top public liberty universities in the nation. We're not sort of faring very well. People often ask, how do we compare to the Big Ten? Here's the sort of upcoming bigger Big Ten, 18 schools, sort of before and after cost of living adjustments. And these data are all in the report, and I'll let you sort of refer to the report to look at those. One of the things we wanted to do in the report was sort of debunk a few common myths that one hears in conversations about faculty salaries in particular and compensation more broadly. And this is one that, you've all probably heard multiple times, right? And it's that, well, yeah, okay, your salaries aren't great, but your benefits are awesome. And when you think about total compensation, you're doing fine. That doesn't appear to be consistent with the data, according to statements made by Vice President Ken Horstman from the Office of Human Resources to the Board of Regents, and we cover this in Appendix 6. So this just doesn't appear to be the case. Now, another one that might hit some nerves, and I'm sorry if it does, is the idea that, well, we could pay faculty more if we just paid all of our senior leaders less. They're grossly overpaid. Now, the report doesn't take any stance on the values of sort of what senior leaders should be paid, doesn't talk about how many we should have, but it did look at if you reallocated all of their salaries or some portion of their salaries to faculty salaries, what would be the benefit? And the bottom line for the Twin Cities campus was that if all 49 identified senior leaders basically volunteered and worked for free, that it would raise the average faculty salary by about 2.5%. Now keep in mind, we're 20% behind peers. And so it's a very small increase, and that's asking all senior leaders to volunteer. So we often hear the argument about sort of chop from the top, and that would solve the problems. This isn't a problem that would solve. Lastly, well, one of the last myths we looked at was the idea that there's no evidence that the U's mission is all being compromised by non-competitive salaries. And again, this is something we take up, and I want to show you a couple graphs related to this. What we did was look at sort of two metrics that are outlined in Impact 2025, the strategic plan, to see how we're doing against peers on those measures through time. And one of those measures is research expenditures. You've often heard, we're in the $1 billion club, but research expenditures keep going up, and that's true, and that's a good thing. What we did was look sort of 50 years into the past to see how our ranking on that metric has changed relative to peers. And that's what I'm showing here. And so early, this goes back to 1972. So the first 20 years or so, we're, around 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, something like that. 1991, we were actually 3rd in the nation behind Johns Hopkins in Michigan. Okay. And you can see there's the 2008 marker as well. And I sort of wanted to go back to that compensation working group. Okay. That group published its report in 1985. And you can see between 1981 and 1985, we dropped about 6 or 7 places, right, in rankings. This is what one of the things the report had to say was that there's concern among the faculty regarding the slippage of general institutional quality that is heightened by the realization that once slippage starts, it's difficult to reverse. Right? And I would argue that this line may represent slippage that they were concerned about. Another quote I think is of interest is from our former president, Mark Yudof. This was from his 2000 State of the University address. And he said, our faculty are doing remarkably well in attracting research funding, but we can't expect our success to continue forever if our faculty salaries remain near the bottom of America's top research universities. I've just shown you that's where our salaries remain. He says, We will simply not be able to retain faculty stars or replace retiring faculty with the best young recruits unless we address this issue. As you can see, we have continued to decline since then. In 2021, we were ranked 22nd behind these institutions. So you can see a lot of Big Ten peers, for example, have leapfrogged us on this particular metric. Second metric we looked at is one President Ettinger actually mentioned earlier, I think it was in the University Senate meeting, talking about the Shanghai rankings or the academic rankings of world universities. And certainly we have a number of programs that are very highly ranked, and that's great. We looked at the overall institutions ranking going back to 2003, which is when I think they started. We were 37th then. By 2008, we had climbed to 28th. Currently, in the Impact 2025 strategic plan, the goal is to be in the top 35 in the world. That's this dashed line here. So what you can see is that from a high of 28th in 2008, we've declined to 44th in the world, which is where we currently sit as an institution. So I've shown you data on faculty compensation, research expenditures, academic ranking, 2 measures of institutional quality. I want to be very, very careful here not to infer causation from correlation. So what I'm going to do is make a hypothesis about causation, okay? And what I'm showing in this graph is the state of Minnesota's per capita, meaning per resident investment in higher education, going back to 1980 after adjusting for inflation. Okay, so these are everything adjusted to, I think, 2021 dollars. And so back in 1989, we ranked 6th in the nation on this metric. And by, I think it was 2013, we had dropped to 29th in the nation. So, you know, when faculty and other employees raise concerns about faculty, there's often this, conversation about, well, but across the board in higher ed, everybody, states, legislatures aren't paying as much for higher ed, and which is absolutely true. It does seem that Minnesota has fallen further than many other states, according to this metric, and I think there are others that would support this. I here again mark the 2008 measure. You can see there was a very steep decline after the financial crisis, and we never recovered back to what we were prior to that. And so we've been hovering around the 50th percentile, the median, essentially for the last several years. We're going to overlay on this graph the inflation-adjusted undergraduate resident tuition. And the reason I'm putting these in the same graph is because these are 2 of the primary sort of budget levers for generating revenue at the university. If you look at undergraduate tuition and inflation adjusted to 2023 dollars, you can see that after the financial crisis, the steep sort of increase in tuition that was outpacing inflation was leveled off. The university sort of bent that curve flat. And with the recent historically high inflation, we've been having the curves actually bending down. And I'm pointing all of this out because over the last 15 years or so, we've been sort of stuck in this sort of logjam where the state has divested in higher ed and the university has bent increases in inflation to being at or below inflation. So the causal hypothesis goes like this, that with these sort of limitations on 2 main sources of revenue, it's been the employees, including faculty, but not just faculty, that have been sort of making up the difference by having pay increases that simply aren't competitive. And that in turn, this has impacted our sort of metrics on research expenditures, maybe our academic rankings. It's just a hypothesis. I'm open to any other data anyone wants to share that maybe sort of speaks to a different story. It's just a hypothesis. Right? So to summarize, the report basically comes to this conclusion that faculty salaries at the University of Minnesota are demonstrably uncompetitive. And that is a quote, as it turns out, from the 1995 Compensation Working Group report, right? We've been here before. That report concluded the University of Minnesota is demonstrably uncompetitive with respect to faculty compensation. That's still true today. And I think sort of thinking about how we might sort of move forward from this, I would say there's one question that every stakeholder should be asking themselves, and that's how much more decline is acceptable? Like, how much further behind, say, the top 10 public research universities are we going to allow faculty salaries to slide to? Right? Now, the report itself makes a lot of recommendations about how we might, as a community, come together to collaborate on sort of assessing the magnitude of the situation and trying to do something forward, looking in terms of fixing the problem. It's a hard problem, I'll give you that. What I hope every stakeholder is also doing is sort of asking themselves, what can I do about this situation? I would say that we in governance are trying to sound an alarm about the issues here, right? And the two pieces of sort of evidence for that are the workforce reinvestment resolution passed by the University Senate in April, and then this report. Now, I think if you read the recommendations, there's a lot of sort of ideas we could sort of, build a task force, something like that, and really sort of move forward. First, by identifying who our peers are, where we want to be relative to those peers, and then maybe doing some market refinements to sort of address those problems and move things forward. It's going to take new money, right? And so no new money isn't really kind of moving anything forward. I've had good conversations with everyone in the administration I've spoken with about this. I feel like there's a sense of awareness that this is a real problem. And I'm hoping that we can sort of collaborate to sort of move forward on some of the recommendations listed in the report. I think I'm not asking the Faculty Senate to endorse this right now or anything, but I think if those conversations stall out or something, we could come back to this body and maybe ask for such a recommendation. And then we could start, making resolutions. But I think we can make some good forward progress by just collaborating and just working on it together. Here's what I would indicate or ask of each of you, right? In terms of what can I do to help? I'm going to use this phrase somewhat cautiously, but I would suggest you get constructively outraged. Okay, now a lot of faculty are outraged about various things, a good chunk of the time. And what in my experience happens is that we talk to each other about our outrage. And so if we could channel that into being constructive to try to, help the institution move forward, I think that would be good. Some of the things I think each and every one of you could do would be to talk to your colleagues about this report, share it with them if they haven't seen it. I think talking to your department head might be a good idea. I mean, every department head will tell you, yeah, I'm not learning anything new. I probably can't do anything about it. Get your department heads to talk to your deans and so forth. We need to have a conversation about this. It's pretty candid. I would also encourage you to use the board's new virtual forum that allows you to, it's essentially using Flipgrid. You can record a short video of 2 minutes length and send it straight to the board, becomes part of the docket. So you can speak to the board directly on this issue. I would encourage you to become a UMN advocate, which is one way faculty can sort of help promote initiatives for the university at the legislature. And then finally, you can sort of contact your legislators yourself. It's almost 5 o'clock. Thank you for your time. I'm not sure how much time is left on the agenda for questions, but if there are any and there's time, I'm happy to take those. I'll leave this up for a second for now with the links to the things I just mentioned. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Comments or questions? I see Jerry's hand.
Mark, as usual, you've done a great job. When I came to the University of Minnesota 23 years ago, I stopped being an administrator for good reason. I've never regretted that. But it didn't take my training and education in science administration away from me. And one of the take-home lessons I have is that there's two types of administrators relative to budgets. One who looks at a budget problem and says, what can we cut and compensate for it? And another one says, we have a budget problem, how do I get more money? It seems that we're paying really large salaries, not to say that the large salaries are going to solve the problem, but we're paying large salaries for a group of administrators, at least at my college and some other places within our administration, for the kinds of administrators who look at cut the budget, and that's how we're going to solve the problem. We're not going to cut the budget to solve this problem. We're going to have to grow to solve this problem. And it needs to grow from our administrators who are supposed to lead us. And I just think that it's very unfortunate that we've had over the last 23 years I've been here, so many administrators who have looked at the problem as one of cutting budgets, and very few that have looked at how do we increase revenue and how do we solve these problems by increasing the amount of funds available to us. But I really thought, I read your report with fascination and sadness, but You did a really excellent job, and all of you need to be commended for it. It's very valuable. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate it.
I need to inform the group that I'm going to have to depart, but Rashna Shah has agreed to preside in my absence. Thank you for everybody's participation today. Please go on.
Maybe while Rashna's unmuting, I'll take the liberty of calling on David Jacobs, if that's okay.
Thank you, Mark and President Edinger. This is, well, I'm David Jacobs and I'm in the School of Public Health. I wanted to say I've been here now 49 years and 7 months, and I've watched these curves develop, and that I think that there is a very big issue about money at the University of Minnesota. And I think that this really should go immediately to the Governor's Commission, which I think would be done by sending the report explicitly to Jacob Tolar, because what we're asking for the legislature to take a more prideful and generous look at the university funding, and particularly with the medical school. So that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Sarah Buchanan.
Yes, thank you. And first of all, I want to echo what David just said by thanking the committee for the incredible work you've done. The report is really detailed, very interesting, and quite enlightening. I agree that this should be shared immediately with the governor and the legislature, but also I wonder if we could somehow get it into the Minneapolis Star Tribune, because I think it's a question of public perception of the university as well. We often hear that faculty are overpaid. We hear comments that, you know, why should I pay for my neighbor's child's education? These kinds of selfish comments. And whatever we can do to move the needle on public perception of the importance of education and of the importance of compensation that is fair would be, I think, an important contribution to this long-term, I don't want to call it a battle, that's too warlike, but this effort to increase faculty compensation and make it fair. I think that's good, because as a faculty person from the Morris campus, looking at that list that you had and seeing that I am paid less on average than most of the two-year community colleges it's disheartening. Thank you very much for all of your work. It's great.
Thank you, sir.
Terry Caraway. This will be the last comment given the time consideration.
Okay, thank you. Terry Caraway from the College of Liberal Arts. I also want to thank the committee for this incredible report. My colleagues are talking about it nonstop at our retention meeting yesterday, department. I'm also really glad to see that you raised the issue of non-tenure track faculty, and that you are including them as faculty rather than putting them in a different category than those of us on the tenure track. But going forward, I think there needs to be a more holistic analysis of faculty salaries that includes our non-tenure track colleagues. And so I'm wondering, how do you see tenure track salaries, compensation related to non-tenure track pay? I mean, as we know, the pay situation for many of our NTT colleagues is much more dire than it is for those on the tenure track. I don't want to diminish the problems of those on the tenure track, of course. Many of our non-tenure track colleagues make as little as $6,000 per course. It's atrocious. And the greater the disparity in pay is between non-tenure track and tenure track salaries, the stronger the incentives are, of course, for administrators to replace non-tenure track faculty with non-tenure track faculty who are paid much, much less. And just in my own department, it recently underwent an APR. And one of the things that administrators in the college were saying is that my department was inefficient. And the reason it was inefficient in terms of delivering student credit hours is because tenure track faculty teach 80% of the credit hours. We don't hire a lot of low paid adjuncts. And the expectation seems to be that we should get rid of a bunch of, full professors who make better salaries and replace them with low-paid, non-tenure track colleagues. So I think, we really need to think more holistically as these positions,
That's
these
time, Terry. Sorry.
two sides of the same coin.
If I could respond just really quickly, John, it sounds like you're being the clerk now. 100% agree with everything you said. There are other committees in governance looking at issues related to employment and work, sort of the employment situation for term faculty and P&A faculty who are mostly doing teaching. One of the asks in the resolution is to actually officially make us all faculty. I'm not sure where that stands at the moment, but I hear you. What I also heard you say, one of the recommendations in the report is to sort of create a big task force to look at these sort of things. And I heard you just volunteer for that, Terry. So thank you. Being sarcastic here.
Thank you, Mark. Item 8 concerns old business. There is no old business for the Faculty Senate. Item 9 concerns new business for the Faculty Senate. Please note that any new business will be referred to the committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting and present. Is there any new business? Although I think that we don't have quorum, so we might not be able to entertain any new business. I need some help with the quorum.
We do still currently have quorum, Rachna.
Okay. Is there any new business? If there is no new business, is there a motion for adjournment?
I so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Amber, please initiate the poll.
More seconds. With 80 ayes and 1 nay, that motion carries.
Thank you, Amber. With this, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for attending. It was a great meeting. Thank you.